I was 19 when this happened, working part-time at a department store inside the Ridgeview Mall. Black Friday was always chaos, but that year it was worse than usual. Hundreds of people lined up outside before sunrise, shoving, shouting, banging on the glass doors like animals trapped in a cage. I hated that shift, but I needed the extra holiday pay. When the doors finally opened, the crowd flooded inside so fast that half the security rope snapped. People were climbing over one another, grabbing anything they could hold. It felt less like a sale and more like a riot by noon. The store was trashed, empty boxes everywhere, spilled drinks, clothes thrown on the ground. The noise was constant, people yelling over each other, kids crying, alarms beeping. I stayed behind the electronics counter, trying to breathe through the madness. That's when I noticed him, a tall man in a gray hoodie, not shopping, not talking, not moving with the crowd. He stood perfectly still in the middle of the electronics floor, his hood pulled down low so I couldn't see his face. At first I thought he was waiting for someone or scrolling through his phone, but he wasn't holding anything. He was just staring in my direction. I tried to ignore it. People act weird during sales, but every time I looked up, he was still watching. Even when crowds blocked him for a few seconds, when they shifted away, he was always in the same spot, always facing me. After a while, I stepped away from the counter to help a customer, and when I glanced back, he was gone. I felt relief for maybe 10 seconds before someone whispered near my ear, so close I felt breath on my neck. "Don't go in the stockroom." I spun around, heart jumping into my throat, but no one was behind me, just the crowd pushing past. I tried to shake it off as noise or imagination. Stress plays tricks. I went back to scanning items and dealing with angry customers demanding discounts that didn't exist. An hour passed. The store got even busier, and then a supervisor told me to take a cart of overdue returns to the back stockroom. My stomach twisted. I didn't want to go, but saying no on Black Friday wasn't an option. So I took the cart, pushing it through aisles packed with people, squeezing between groups, avoiding elbows and bags swinging in my face. As I got closer to the back hallway, the noise of the crowd faded, replaced by that humming quiet you only hear behind the store. The hallway was dim, long, and empty. Halfway down the hall, I heard footsteps behind Mislo, heavy, dragging slightly. I turned around, but no one was there. The store was several doors away, too far for anyone to be that close without me seeing them. The fluorescent lights overhead flickered, buzzing softly, and a cold draft brushed past me like someone walking by too close. I pushed the cart faster. When I reached the stockroom door, my hands were shaking. I scanned my badge to unlock it. The moment the door clicked open, I heard the footsteps again closer, louder, matching my movements. I didn't want to turn around, but I did. The tall man in the gray hoodie was standing at the end of the hallway, still, head lowered, hands at his sides. I whispered something like, "Can I help you?" But he didn't respond. He didn't move. He just stood there, facing me, blocking the only exit back to the store. My heart started pounding so loudly I could hear blood rushing in my ears. I stepped backward into the stockroom, planning to close the door and call a supervisor. But before I could, he lifted his head slightly. There were no customers around now. No noise, no witnesses, just me and him. I tried to shut the door, but he started walking slow at first. Then, picking up speed, I slammed the door and locked it. His footsteps hit the other side almost instantly, pounding the metal with a force that rattled the frame. Each hit was harder than the last. I stumbled backward, breathing in rapid gasps, grabbing my phone to call mall security. But the store's deep back rooms had terrible reception. My calls wouldn't go through. The pounding on the door grew violent. The metal shook with each hit. Then suddenly, silence. No footsteps. No breathing. Nothing. I stayed frozen for almost a minute, terrified that he was waiting for me to open the door. Finally, I forced myself to move toward The exit on the opposite side of the stockroom that leads into the receiving bay. I unlocked it and slipped out into the cold loading area behind the store. Rain was falling hard, echoing against the metal dumpsters. I ran across the lot toward the mall's security office. When security checked the hallway, the man was gone. No sign of him. No trace. They checked footage later, and this is the part that still makes my skin crawl. There was no video of him entering the hallway. No footage of him in electronics. No footage of him anywhere inside the store, except for one frame, in a single camera. Freeze taken from above the stockroom hallway. He was standing behind me, closer than I remembered. Face still hidden by the hood, head tilted as if he was whispering something into my ear. I quit the job 2 days later, but every year when Black Friday comes around, and I pass by that mall, I still look over my shoulder, because I swear I can feel someone behind me, breathing too quietly to be human, waiting for a door I don't have the courage to open again. Story number 2. I was 21 when I worked my first and last Black Friday shift at a big box electronics store. The place opened at 4 a.m., but by 3:15 the parking lot was already full. People ran to the doors like the world was ending, pounding on the glass, shouting about deals. Managers kept yelling about safety rules, but no one listened. I stayed near the entrance, holding a scanner, trying not to get crushed when the crowd finally surged in. Within minutes of opening, the store felt like a human storm. People dove toward TVs, ripped open boxes, shouted at employees, shoved each other out of the way. The aisles filled so fast that you could barely move 2 steps without someone bumping into you. In all that chaos, I noticed something strange. A man standing perfectly still in the middle of the gaming aisle. No cart, no products, no phone. Just staring directly at me. He wasn't shopping. He wasn't browsing. He wasn't even blinking. I brushed it off as just another weirdo. Black Friday brings out the strangest people. But even when I moved around the store helping customers, I felt eyes on me. Every time I glanced up, I'd catch a glimpse of that same man at the end of an aisle, watching. He never pushed or shoved like the others. He just moved slowly, steady, always facing me, like a shadow following me without getting too close. At one point, I had to take a pallet of headphones to the back. I wheeled it through the crowd, weaving between frantic shoppers until I reached the quieter hallway near the staff-only door. The second I stepped into that hallway, the noise of the store vanished behind me like someone shut off the world. It was dark, cold, and buzzing slightly from the old fluorescent lights overhead. I scanned my badge and pushed the door open as I walked inside. Something made me stop. There were wet sneaker prints on the floor, fresh ones, leading deeper into the stockroom. I followed them for a few steps, thinking maybe a customer wandered back by mistake, but the prints suddenly stopped beside a tall stack of boxers. I stepped around them slowly, peeking between the aisles of shelves. Nothing. Silence. Just the hum of the ventilation. I turned to Levon. Nearly jumped out of my skin. The man in the black jacket was standing in the doorway behind me. He wasn't supposed to be there. No customer could access that hallway. He must have slipped in behind me just before the door closed. His hood was pulled low over his face, and he stood with his hands at his sides, breathing slowly, like this wasn't an accident, like he had been waiting for me to go somewhere quiet. I said something like, "This is employees only," but he didn't move, didn't speak. He just tilted his head slightly, like he was analyzing me, memorizing me. Then, without a word, he stepped forward. Not fast, not aggressive, just enough to make my pulse spike. I backed away instantly. He took another step. I took another back. He kept coming, slow and steady, forcing me deeper into the stockroom. My back hit a shelf, rattling boxes above me. His footsteps were soft on the concrete, too soft for a full-grown man. When he got close enough for me to smell the damp fabric of his jacket, I shoved the rolling cart into him and ran. He stumbled but didn't fall. I heard the wheels screech as he pushed it aside and followed me. His footsteps grew louder, faster. I sprinted between shelves, knocking down bins and boxers behind me, trying to slow him down. Something crashed loudly behind me, but I didn't stop. I cut through the narrow aisles until I reached the emergency exit at the back of the store, slammed the bar, and burst into the freezing rain. I didn't stop running. The loading dock was empty, except for a few pallets and dumpsters. The rain was coming down so hard it blurred the world into gray streaks. I could barely breathe as I ran through puddles deeper than my ankles. Behind me, I heard the emergency door slam open, metal hitting brick. His footsteps followed, heavy, splashing, unsteady. He wasn't trying to be quiet anymore. I ran across the lot and toward the far side of the mall. The rain blinded me, but I saw a security golf cart parked near the far curb. I sprinted toward it, yelling for help, slipping on the wet pavement. The security officer inside jumped out and grabbed me. Just as the man in the jacket reached the edge of the loading zone, the officer shouted at him, but the man didn't respond. He stood there, breathing hard, shoulders rising and falling beneath the soaked fabric. He didn't run. He didn't attack. He just watched me get pulled into the cart. His head tilted slightly again, the same way he did inside the store. By the time backup arrived, he was gone. They checked the cameras later, but the footage made everything worse. There was plenty of video showing me moving through the aisles, going into the stockroom, running out. But the man, he almost never appeared clearly. Every time he was visible, his face was blurred not by motion, not by bad quality, but like the camera struggled to focus on him. The only clear shot was from the loading dock camera, his silhouette standing in the rain, watching, head tilted. And here's the part that still haunts my security. Froze a frame where he stepped forward under the light. His face wasn't covered. No mask, no hood hiding anything. But even then, the camera didn't catch his features. Just static where the face should be. I quit the job that same week. I still shop at that mall sometimes. But every Black Friday since then, when the crowds gather and the aisles get loud, I always feel like someone is standing just behind the shelves, head tilted, waiting for me to walk somewhere quiet again. I was 24 when this happened, and to this day, it's the reason I never stepped foot in a mall on Black Friday again. My girlfriend at the time insisted we go to West Point Mall because a big clothing store was offering doorbusters. I didn't care for any of it, but she really wanted the deal, so I tagged along. The place was a madhouse from the moment we walked, in crowds pushing through doors, workers yelling for people to slow down, security trying to keep order and failing miserably. The rain outside had soaked half the shoppers, making the floors slippery and the air smell like wet clothes and sweat. Inside the store, things were even worse. People were ripping coats off racks, grabbing handfuls of sweaters, arguing over sizes. My girlfriend went off to look at shoes and told me to wait near the accessory section. I leaned against a shelf and scrolled through my phone, trying to ignore the chaos. That's when I noticed a man standing at the end of the aisle, tall, thin, black beanie, black raincoat dripping onto the tile. He wasn't shopping. He wasn't with anyone. He was just staring down the aisle. At first, I thought he was looking at something behind me. But the longer I watched, the more obvious it became. He was staring at me. I shifted my eyes away, pretending not to notice. When I glanced back, he had moved closer. Not much, but enough to send a cold prickling up my spine. I looked around for my girlfriend, thinking maybe I was imagining things. I wasn't. I kept moving to different aisles, pretending to browse, but every time I turned, he was somewhere nearby, near the jackets, near the scarves, near the shoes, always facing me, always still. His eyes were dark, wide, unblinking. The crowd pushed past him, brushing his shoulders. Yet he didn't move an inch. At some point, I tried shrugging it off and went toward the dressing rooms, hoping my girlfriend was done. The hallway leading to them was dimmer and quieter, just a narrow strip of light. The echo of doors closing and muffled voices from inside. I walked in, looking for her, but the hall was empty. As I started to turn back, a soft whisper called my name from behind me. Not a shout, not urgent, just a quiet, familiar voice. I spun around, thinking it was her, but no one was there. Just the open dressing room doors and the sound of hangers clacking in the distance. My chest tightened. I stepped backward slowly, realizing the whisper didn't sound like her at all. It was deeper, slower, like someone practicing the sound of my name. When I reached the hallway corner, I peeked out into the main store and my heart nearly dropped. The man in the black raincoat was standing just a few feet from the hallway entrance, his head tilted slightly, like he had been waiting for me to come out. I backed into the hallway, pulse thundering in my ears. He moved too fast. There were too many people. How was he always so close? I went deeper into the dressing room area, hoping to lose him, weaving between rows of mirrors and stalls. But halfway through, the overhead lights flickered, humming sharply before dimming. My reflection blurred in the mirrors around me like some kind of nightmare. Then I heard footsteps, slow, dragging footsteps, entering the hallway, coming closer. The floor creaked under the weight of each step. I ducked behind a long wall mirror, holding my breath, praying he'd walk past. Through the crack between the mirror and the wall, I saw him. He moved in absolute silence, except for the wet squeak of his shoes. He walked right up to the farthest dressing room door and pushed it open. It creaked loudly, echoing through the narrow hallway. Empty. He opened another. Empty. Then another. Empty. Then he stopped, right outside the mirror I was hiding behind. So close, I could hear his breathing. Slow, heavy, controlled. His fingers brushed the side of the mirror, leaving streaks of rainwater. He pressed his palm against the glass and dragged it downward slowly. I covered my mouth so tightly I could barely breathe. If he looked even slightly to the side, he'd see me. Something dropped in the hallway, a hanger or a shoe, and he snapped his head toward the sound. That gave me the only chance I had. I slipped out from behind the mirror, running down the hallway barefoot because I'd kicked off my shoes without realizing it. I burst into the store, pushing through crowds, spinning around to see if he followed. I saw him turn the corner, still calm, still silent, still watching. I dove toward my girlfriend, grabbing her arm and mumbling something like, "We need to go, now." She asked what was wrong, but all I could say was, "Please, please, just move." We pushed through the crowd toward the exit, but when we reached the doors, I looked back one last time. The raincoat man was standing dead center in the store, hands at his sides, staring straight at me as shoppers swarmed around him. He didn't follow us outside. He didn't chase. He didn't yell. He just watched. Later, my girlfriend said maybe he was just a weird guy. Maybe I overreacted. But 3 days later, she found something in her bag, something she swore she didn't buy, didn't pick up, didn't even see in the store. A black, rain-soaked beanie, the same one he was wearing, and when she turned it over, inside the tag, was my name, written in black marker. Story number 4 asterisk. I was 27 when this happened, working at a clothing store inside a crowded outlet mall. Black Friday at this place was no joke. People lined up around the building before sunrise, screaming at security, banging on the glass doors like they were trying to break in. Once we opened, the crowd poured inside so violently that one of our mannequins fell over and shattered. Everyone stomped right over it like it wasn't even there. My shift started at noon, right when the chaos peaked. The store was a mess, clothes all over the floor, empty hangers everywhere, shelves half broken from people yanking items off them. I was assigned to the fitting rooms, which was probably the worst place imaginable on Black Friday. People fought for stalls, argued about returns, tried on clothes without closing the curtains. It was non-stop noise and tension. Around 3 p.m., while I was restocking a rack near the fitting rooms, I noticed a man lingering near the back wall. He wasn't looking at clothes, wasn't holding anything, wasn't with anyone. He stood perfectly still, facing the fitting rooms, dressed in a soaked black windbreaker that dripped onto the carpet. His hood was up, hiding most of his face, but I could see pale skin and a thin jawline beneath it. At first, I thought he was waiting for someone inside, but he never checked his phone, never looked around. He just stared at the fitting room doors. Customers moved around him, constantly brushing his shoulders, bumping into him, but he never reacted. He didn't even blink. I tried helping a few customers and ignored him for a while, until one woman complained that someone kept trying to open her fitting room door from the outside, even though she'd locked it. She was upset, shaking a little, saying she saw the curtain move and the doorknob twist. I assumed it was maybe a confused shopper or a rude kid. But then another customer said the same thing, then another. 3 different people claimed someone kept trying to get inside their stalls. I went to check, knocking on each door, asking if everyone was okay. No one saw who it was. No one heard footsteps. No one heard a voice. Just the doorknob trying to turn. Slowly, repeatedly, like someone testing each lock. When I stepped back from the hallway, the man in the windbreaker was gone. I tried convincing myself it was just nerves or misunderstandings. People get jumpy with crowds, but about half an hour later, while I was picking up fallen hangers near the giant wall mirror by the back of the store, I felt like someone was watching me. I looked up and nearly dropped everything. The man was standing behind me in the reflection, not directly behind me, but far enough back that I knew I should have seen him approach. I turned around instantly. He wasn't there. The aisle was empty. I checked the mirror again, empty. Customers pushed past me, reaching for random clothes, but none of them paid attention to what I'd just seen. I felt crazy, stressed, overwhelmed. I walked toward the fitting rooms, and that's when I heard it. A faint knock, not on the door, not on the wall, on one of the fitting room mirrors. A slow, gentle knuckle tap, coming from inside a locked stall. I froze. One customer inside the stall shrieked, saying she saw a shadow behind the curtain, even though she was alone. I immediately unlocked the master key and opened it for her, and the stall was empty. Nothing inside, no one hiding, no one running out. Just a mirror with a blurry print on the glass, like someone had pressed their forehead against it. The woman ran out crying. I tried to calm her down, but before I could say anything, I felt a cold draft behind me. I turned around and saw the fitting room curtain at the end of the hall slowly sway, as if someone had just slipped inside. I approached it cautiously. The curtain was half open, revealing nothing but an empty stool and a pile of clothes someone left behind. But the moment I reached for the curtain, a hand grabbed the bottom edge from inside and yanked it shut. I staggered back, heart pounding so hard I nearly screamed. I called security. They arrived in minutes, and together we opened the curtain. Empty. No vent big enough for someone to escape through. No footprints. No wet trails on the carpet. Nothing but across the mirror inside the stall. Written in fog were 5 words. You shouldn't be alone today. My blood went cold. Behind me, someone gasped. When I turned, a woman was pointing towards something on the ground near the back hallway. A black windbreaker, soaked, heavy, cold, the same one the man had been wearing. We searched the whole store, but he was gone. No sign of him anywhere. Security checked the cameras later and saw something that made everyone uneasy. The man appeared in dozens of frames, standing in aisles, near fitting rooms, behind customers. But in every frame, his head was tilted in a different direction, never the same way twice, and never toward the camera. He always faced someone else, someone close by, someone unaware. I quit 2 weeks later, but sometimes, when I pass by the mall, I swear I still see that same soaked windbreaker, hanging on a random bench or draped on a rail, like he drops it wherever he's standing, watching the next person who doesn't notice him until it's too late. I was 25 when this happened, working the overnight restock shift at a home improvement store right next to a massive shopping center. Black Friday had just ended for them, but for us it was barely starting. Our doors opened at 6 a.m., so we spent the whole night preparing shelves and cleaning the wreck the morning rush would bring. The mall next door had been packed since midnight. Sirens, shouting, car horns, everything. Even from inside our store, you could feel the tension like a vibration under the floor. At around 3:30 a.m., while restocking extension cords in aisle 19, I heard something strange coming from the front entrance. Not footsteps, not voices, just a slow scraping sound, like someone dragging metal along the outside of the automatic doors. I glanced over at my coworker, Brandon, who was on a ladder nearby. He heard it too. We exchanged a look, shrugged it off, and kept working. People do dumb things at night. No reason to panic. The scraping continued for a minute, then stopped abruptly. I took a break, grabbed a coffee from the break room, and walked toward the lumber section to help another coworker. But halfway there, I noticed something off. One of the tall wooden doors we kept on display, those heavy, decorative ones that take two people to lift, was swung open slightly, even though we always kept them secured. I walked over, thinking maybe someone leaned on it earlier, but as I pushed it back into place, a faint chill ran down my spine. There were wet footprints behind it, just two, facing the door, like someone had been hiding behind it, watching. I backed away quietly, unsure if I should call security or just pretend I didn't see anything. I went to get Brandon, but before I even reached him, I heard a loud crash in aisle 14, then another. Boxers toppling, something slamming into shelves. Brandon and I rushed over, but when we turned into the aisle, no one was there. Just a trail of toppled boxes leading toward the back hallway where the staff lockers were. We followed slowly, calling out, assuming maybe it was a drunk customer who wandered in early. But the deeper we went into the hallway, the colder it felt. When we reached the locker room door, it was cracked open. Not wide, but just enough for someone to peek through. I placed my hand on it and pushed gently. The room was dark, completely still, and then we saw it. A shopping bag from the mall next door, sitting on the bench, black, wrinkled, dripping water. Inside, barely visible under the fluorescent flicker, was a mask. A cheap plastic one, white with hollow eyes, and a faint red smear across the cheek. It was wet, like someone had worn it in the rain minutes earlier. Brandon whispered, "Man, someone's in here." We backed out quickly and went straight to the manager's office. He checked the security feed for the last 30 minutes. That's when things stopped making sense. The cameras showed no one entering through the main doors, no one entering through the back, no one walking the aisles. But at one point, in a frame so quick you'd miss it if you blinked, a tall shape passed between aisles 13 and 14, just a blur. A human-shaped blur, with something white where the face should have been. The manager thought it was camera glitching, but I knew it. WASN, single quotes. At around 5 a.m., we got ready to open. Customers started lining up outside in the freezing rain. Brandon and I were stationed near the front to help with the early rush. I tried to shake off the feeling, to focus on work. But when the first customer came in, a woman wearing a poncho, she froze at the entrance and backed up. So quickly she almost slipped. She pointed at something near the carts, a single wet footprint, long, deep, pointing inward. I tried laughing it off, saying it was probably ours, but she shook her head. "No," she whispered. "That's not a shoe print. That's a boot. A really big one." We kept working. People rushed in. Crowds formed. Deals got snatched. Everything felt normal again, until 6:12 a.m. That's when a scream echoed from aisle 11, high, sharp, panicked. Then, another. Customers started backing away from the aisle, in a wave, faces pale, eyes wide. Brandon and I rushed over, pushing through the crowd. When we reached the aisle, everyone was staring upward, pointing. Someone had climbed to the top of the storage racks, 40 feet above the ground. Sitting perfectly still on the metal beam was a man in a soaked black jacket. His hood covered most of his face, but we could see just enough. A pale cheek, dark eye sockets, and in his hand, the same white mask we saw in the locker room. He wasn't shopping. He wasn't lost. He wasn't confused. He was watching. Security was called immediately, but by the time they arrived, the man was gone. He didn't climb down, didn't fall, didn't run past anyone. He simply wasn't there anymore. But when cameras were checked later, something even worse appeared. On the footage, at exactly 6:12 a.m., the man slowly turned his head toward the camera and smiled. But the smile wasn't on his mouth. His mouth never moved. The smile appeared in the mask he was holding, like it reflected something we couldn't see. I quit that day, and now, every Black Friday when I drive past that store, I swear I see a tall figure standing near the automatic doors, watching the crowds push their way inside, waiting for the right moment to slip in again.